Welcome to CoCo Conjure. Here we discuss all things hoodoo, conjure, magic, wellness, folklore, and the occasional personal story. My goal is to give foundational knowledge and a little bit of inspiration so I can help others build their personal spiritual or magical practice or add to their personal spiritual or magical practice. If you have not guessed already, my name is CoCo. And I feel so blessed, cousin, to have you here with me. If you could please follow or subscribe to this podcast wherever you are, I would appreciate that. If you like what you hear as we traverse today's topic, or I should just say my thoughts, please give me a like or leave a comment. Okay, so I like to plan out my episode topics ahead of time. And as I was finishing up March, I realized March has 5 Sundays. And I thought maybe that on months that shake out to have 5 Sundays, I would give myself a little bit of a break and just do like a check-in, I just talk with you all on whatever's happening in my life or whatever is in the spiritual space, I guess. And just chat, kind of like an audio diary entry that I'm asking you to like participate in, cousin. So cousin, if you would like to leave a comment, if you're on YouTube, I would love to see your comments. If you want to message me personally, you can reach me at CoCo Conjure at gmail.com. That's CoCo NJURE at gmail.com. I would sincerely love to hear your thoughts on the topic, and maybe at the end of future episodes I can read out some comments or read out some letters that were sent. All right, so what do I want to talk about today? Lately the need for community has been very heavy on my mind. I would love to join a group or do consistent meetups with folks that are like-minded and like talk shop. A lot of folks in our hoodoo space try to find like a single mentor, but I'm of the mind that our spiritual practices are more or less communal. The problem is, the problem I have at least is, and maybe hopefully someone else out there feels this way, the problem I have is that I don't feel like I fit in. Like, I know what I believe. I've expressed to you guys what I believe, and I'm very, very, very aware that my beliefs are on the fringe, kind of like what I talked about in the Hoodoo altar episode where I was talking about ancestral veneration and how I don't worry about like upliftment, for example. I don't think that my ancestors are literally sitting next to me on the other side of the veil. Like, my beliefs don't line up with mainstream, hoodoo practice. So if it makes it kind of hard to, to feel community, to find community. I mean, so like, what else do I mean? Okay. So like, for example, I think that there's like 2 different types of community. I think lately, at least, you see the traditional hoodoos and you see like the modern hoodoos. So you have the folks who are hardcore traditional hoodoos. I mean, as traditional as you can be, because a lot of the plantation styles and methods are like lost to us, right? Because of commercialization of hoodoo practices, along with other things. It wasn't worth documenting to those who could document, hell, the commercialization of all spiritual practices is probably a problem, if I'm going to be honest, but we're here to talk about hoodoo. I'm not saying that that's a good or a bad thing, like people got to eat and we live in a capitalist society. So it is what it is. But yeah, there are these old school teachers who are kind of rigid in their workings. Like they feel like they have to preserve these long standing traditions, and there's no room to move outside of tradition, right? There's this one guy from New Zealand, a part of this like Kiwi Mojo imported Haitian voodoo practices into New Zealand. Yeah, this person is on the conjure boards on Facebook, like correcting people left, right, and center about how things are done and how things should be said. So like, they're not hoodoo spells. They are work or tricks or fixes, right? They're not rituals. They're spiritual work, right? Like he'll correct that. And like I'm reading the comments and I'm watching the back and forth with some folks and I'm like, yo, this dude allows room for like no growth. Like he's talking about how like how hoodoo is important, and it's important to preserve hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of tradition that I'm pretty sure is not this person's by blood or even by like culture. I'm not sure. Maybe they're an expat, but it's definitely a tradition that's like a half a world away from wherever they are. And definitely not a tradition as old as they think. Like slavery ended, 150 years ago in the United States, give or take a year. And like I said, I can confidently say no one is practicing how slaves actually practice their work. Like no one is doing plantation style hoodoo. That's really much lost to us because of commercialization, because of how things get passed on, like a game of telephone, as it were. I'll do something and then my next generation will take what I did and they'll do it, in a way that works for them, and then so on and so on and so on, like that, right? Like also like think about what we have now, right? Like American slaves probably didn't have lodestones or magnetic sand, right? They didn't have candles with different colors on them and different colors in them and have prayers on the back. You know what I mean? Because like the slaves didn't even have ownerships over their own bodies. I'm sure some of them who learned how to read, who were writing, may have maybe written a petition, but I would give a guess. I would actually put a quarter on it that if they did give petition, it was in the form of prayer and it was said out loud. Because, again, they didn't have autonomy over their body. So what were they reading and writing with, as it were, if their owners didn't allow for it, Sure, I mean, there is still traditional hoodoo and we should honor tradition. But let's be real, as generations have come and gone, I think traditions have changed. And as more generations come, the traditions will have more changes, right? And it's hard to talk to traditional hoodoo sometimes because they don't allow for the generation after them to honor and acknowledge and practice the tradition and still find a way to make it work in whatever their modern time is. So that's tough if you want to find a community and you want to have the freedom to be a little creative. And then, a lot of this traditional hoodoo is also based in Christian practice, right? So like, how do you practice traditional hoodoo and you don't believe in the Abrahamic God? Like when you want to command an herb, for an example, a traditional hoodoo would tell you that you need to say something like, mint, bring me prosperity, bring me money quickly and without trial. I command this in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Right? Or, they would be like, oh, you need to bust through doors, call on St. Peter. Oh, you need something done with haste, you want to petition St. Expedite. Like, I'm not Christian, let alone dual faith, right? I think I make a lot of exceptions in my work. Like I use the Psalms, for example, gospel music, for example. But like saint work isn't something that ever appealed to me, specifically probably because, no, not specifically probably, child. Saint work never appealed to me because I'm not from a Catholic space. Like I was raised Protestant. I was raised in a Lutheran church, and I was raised in a black Pentecostal church, right? So like there were no saints. That's not something that my mind grasps, as it were. And I'm all about commanding herbs, but to command a herb in the name of God just feels disingenuous when I'm not someone who believes in the Abrahamic God. So, whether it's the rigidness of traditional hoodoo or just the Christian, how Christian adjacent it is, traditional hoodoo communities are just not, they're clearly not where I belong, because of my cosmology, because of how I would like to practice. I think, again, there's something good there. I think that if you can't play jazz unless you understand how music works, right? Like you can't miss notes unless you know what notes need to be missed. So I think it's important for everyone in the space to have foundational traditional understanding, but I don't think I could thrive in a community so rigid, So then it seems like, my other option is modern hoodoo, right? The modern hoodoo community. And these folks who blend up a whole bunch of different practices, they incorporate chakras and crystal work and vibrations and frequencies, or they're, talking about scratching stuff or some heavy Orisha initiation kind of stuff that child, like they had to go to the Caribbean or to the motherland to learn, and it's all about being initiated into bigger ADRs, or it's all about like new age systems. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, I just need to find a good straw broom so I can sweep the mess out of my house. Like grandma told me to do. You know what I mean? And child, oh my God, I'm pretty sure I sound so blasphemous. I'm so sorry if I sound blasphemous to anyone. It's just that at the moment it seems that like that's where modern style hoodoo is going. Either it's high vibes or lekes, It's, about negative entities entering through portals, or it's about which Orisha has your head, and then putting hoodoo on top of that. And I just, I don't think I belong in those spaces either. Like I don't want to follow the Orisha. I find the Orisha tradition so fascinating. And to see how they've like moved around our world a little bit, I find it so fascinating. But just because I find something fascinating doesn't mean that I want to participate in it, or even that I'm meant to participate in it. And I can respect that. But it feels like that's where hoodoo's headed, right? Like we traded out Christian practices for African religious practices, and then we layer the hoodoo on top, the Black Americanness on top, And I just, either way, like traditional or modern, I don't feel like I fit in. I enjoy and I honor and I want to understand hoodoo tradition, but when I ask questions or I just see how traditionalists engage sometimes, there's no wiggle room for growth. Like I want to be creative and riff off the old classics. When I say riff off the old classics, I mean things like I don't buy Florida water. I will make my own Florida water. I see the significance of Florida water in hoodoo, but I also know that it's a manufactured product that no one is standing over and blessing. I'm aware that, there's a specific type of Florida water. You have to get the cologne. Like it's a specific thing. But, I like to source my own materials and I like to make my own things. I make my own incense. I pour my own candles. I make my own blessed waters. I make my own Florida water, just riffing off of traditional practice in that way. And I literally cannot follow modern hoodoo practice because I'm not a vibrational girly. And like I said, I find the Orisha traditions. I find the Orisha traditions fascinating, but like I'm just not interested in being initiated or even just following them uninitiated. Like, that's not. It's not where my head is. No pun intended. Um, so I'm just floating out here on the fringe, setting my lights and maintaining the various tables or altars, if you will, that I have that, bring some healing in my life. Trying to find ways to uncommercialize my practice and stay in line with the beliefs I hold on divinity. Child, is uncommercialized a word? Don't Google it, please. Just don't Google it, please. Just leave the answers for the heavens to decide. Oh, dear heaven. Um, all of this kind of got me thinking, like, what comes first? Do you find a practice that matches your beliefs, your understandings of the universe? Or do you go into a traditional practice that explains how things work, explains the universe? You know what I mean? Because I did the former. I took that time to figure out what I'm about, and then when I went from like just exploring different traditions and what I was interested in, Hoodoo stuck out to me because it was all about animism, all about the spirit in things, all about all about a family, all about the veneration of ancestors, all about learning from your living legends. Like all of those things are very important to me. And in this journey I've taken, so far, I feel good. Like I feel better than I've ever felt before. And I know that Hoodoo is the right path for me. But like the anxiety over, am I traditional enough? Am I so modern, so far removed from tradition that I'm not even practicing Hoodoo anymore? Like that anxiety is a lot to bear. And I feel it a lot heavier now that I'm doing this podcast and, I'm in online spaces more than I used to be. You know what really drew me to Hoodoo, if I'm being real deal? What really drew me to Hoodoo, besides the ancestors and all that, was the folklore and this ability to like heal with nature, heal with the world around you, and by covering yourself in blessing, that plantation style Hoodoo that we get glimpses of and read about, but it's just not in vogue, really. That I read, they would pee on the ground, and then if the ants came, the person was diabetic. Or they would, someone's leg would be all messed up and cut up and bad, and they would wrap it in bandages with maggots, and the maggots would eat through the dead flesh. And then that would leave, a nice clean space that you can, like a nice clean leg to work from after some more doctoring. Like this idea of doctoring wealth and wholeness, not wealth, health, doctoring health and wholeness, both physically and spiritually, just sits so right with me. And then there's like plant tradition, right? Like what I grow here in Maryland, what my grandmother had access to in South Carolina, maybe didn't grow, or you didn't have access to if you were in Detroit, or if you were in, I don't know, Texas, right? Like, so that kind of root doctoring that I'm talking about, that's kind of layered into Hoodoo, and it was all regional, right? Very regional. And then, of course, the outside influences like the Haitian influence and the Voodoo influence in New Orleans, that has to inform also how just hoodoo practitioners practiced. So, I guess it also comes down to like whose tradition. Like there is no set doctrine here. And that's why you can get away with the crystals and the and the layering with other religions, because there is no set doctrine in hoodoo. Hoodoo is the spiritual expression and healing and harming systems of Black American people. Like that's what it is, right? So, well, Black American culture, let's put it that way, because not everybody in the hoodoo space is Black, whether we all like that or not. It doesn't matter if you like it. It's just the truth of the matter, Like that guy in New Zealand, like, whose ancestors is he venerating? Is he venerating like my ancestors, my Black American, enslaved ancestors? Or is he venerating his own? When it comes to blood, at least, because we know your elevated ancestors, your ancestors of note, can be anyone that's impactful in your life. It doesn't just have to, they don't have to just look like you, right? Or be from your blood, I should say. They can just be of your root, But like, that's it? That's who he's venerating? And like, he's a world away. If he is native New Zealand or from New Zealand, he's a literal like world away. So like, how does he go about that? Because when I venerate my ancestors, for example, I cook some grits and I cook eggs and I cook, a little bacon, and I say my prayer and I have I have my meal, or I make that neck bone and the collard greens, stewed real good all day, I do it the way that I saw my great grandmother do it and my grandmother do it, and they did it the way they saw their parents do it. So like, those are the kind of foods I'm making. Those are the kind of, things I'm eating. And that's so, I'm not like, that's so Southern. That's so Southern American, what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, is he doing the same thing, you think? Or is it just, the whiskey and the water and the cigarettes? I don't know. I want to ask, but I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid to ask him. So I'll leave it there, I guess. But, yeah. What was I talking about? Oh, right. Just the anxiety over, am I traditional enough? Am I not? Am I too modern? Am I not, like, am I even fitting in modern practices? I don't think I am either. And like how that weighs, on my personal practice. I call myself a hoodoo because I feel that's what I'm doing. It's a label and that fits best what I do, what I, how I like to practice, and generally what I believe. It's all the doctrinal stuff that people try to impose on hoodoo that's a little upsetting. Or like this idea that it can only be done if it was done before, if it was done in history. That's the only time you can do it. So you don't make Florida water, you buy Florida water. You go to you don't, make a Hoyt's cologne or whatever it is. You have to go and buy Hoyt's cologne. That doesn't sit well with me. Like I want to flex my creativity and I want to uncommercialize, So yeah, I guess I just kind of sit with that anxiety. I think a lot of this anxiety I have around my practice would be eased if I were able to find in-person practitioners that I can have consistent meetups with. Like, so far, the only communities I've been able to participate in are the ones online. And they're led by someone. And so, in leading on an online community, there's one person and then we all kind of move around this one person's ideologies. Or there's open forum, and in open forum, you are brought with, differing opinions, but because it's online and because there's a level of anonymity, because there's a level of anonymity there, people don't have to be respectful, um, it's hard. It's hard to have an online community. I think I would really love to meet up with people in person. Oh, here in Maryland, there is this group called the Conjure Society, and their website is fascinating. They call hoodoo an ethno religion, and I can get down with that. I think that's where I'm at, like an ethno religion. An ethno religion are religions which are, child, this is hard to explain. Ethno religions are religions that are related to a particular ethnic group and are like a definition of their culture. So one of the more well-known ethno religions out there is Judaism, right? Like, so think of Jewish folks. Their religion and their culture are intertwined. Usually it's not just the religion, right? It's a way of life for them. Ethno religion. I think that's the best way I can define it. So yeah, I can totally see that for hoodoo, it's culture, it's family, it's faith, and it's all mixed up. So I got so excited, and when I found the society in Maryland, and I wanted to go to an event or two to find out what they're about, maybe talk to some people and get a feel for the group, because you can't just show up somewhere and demand membership or inclusion, right? Like, you have to do some listening and ask some questions and let things happen organically. But wouldn't you know it, no events are posted. Just nothing is going on. I don't know. Maybe I just got to know somebody who knows somebody. But I don't know somebody twice removed. So damn, I'm stuck to the spiritual festivals and the spiritual gatherings that are open to everyone and not necessarily geared toward hoodoo or geared toward those who are like-minded like me, who see it as sort of an ethno religion and see it as a cultural thing. The little I do know about the Conjure Society did give me the inspiration to try to learn more about historical Black figures from Maryland. Like, I spent a lot of time with my grandma and learning about stuff they did in the down south. Maybe I should take a second and play right here in my own backyard. You feel me? Like, get some learning in about Maryland. So I'm planning a trip with my mom to go to the Harriet Tubman Trail and Center right here on the Eastern Shore. And I would love to start to tailor my work towards what's right here in Maryland, like what I have access to right here in Maryland without having to order from the catalog, without having to go to Amazon or look for, whatever it is in the occult shops. Just try to find what's in my own backyard or what I can grow that's native to my space. So that's nice, at least. I didn't get to meet them, but I feel like I still took something away from my short-lived encounter. What was I talking about? Community, right. The only consistent group in my area, if I'm going to be honest, are the Wiccans. And it's too bad that's not my calling, because I could literally throw a stone and hit a Wiccan temple. They're not obvious, they're not overt, but if you want to go searching for community, it's the easiest thing to find, I have heard folks who layer up Wicca and hoodoo. So, I mean, like, Wicca is their religious base and then hoodoo is their magical practice of choice. It's a magic system in that sense, not an ethno religion. Like, it's not so far-fetched because spiritual practices are super complicated. So to be a dual practitioner in that way, I guess you can make that work. But, I'm not sure if that's a path I want to go down or if that's authentic to myself, Like, becoming a seeker and going through initiation in Wicca just because I want to find community seems like I'm not being honest in some way. So, Big Sis, you guys know Big Sis. Yeah. Big Sis suggested I just kind of build up my own hoodoo temple of sorts, where I just find folks and we gather together in person on occasion and online with some consistency, and we just talk shop or perform spiritual work together or network, because not every hoodoo is good at everything. One of you guys asked me a while ago if I read for people, and it's I read for myself. I might read for like family or friend, but I don't read for others. It's something that I can do, but it's not something that I'm necessarily good enough at that I'm confident to read for other people. You know what I mean? Like that's not my suit. Now, if you need a conditioned oil created, if you need or if you want a special incense blend, if you want to know, which herb does what for who, like I can do that for sure. But I'm not very good at like the reading aspect of it, And so I would want to meet someone who is. I would want to have someone in my group who knew how to do that. And like that was their power, and just not have a mentorship necessarily, but just be peers talking and sharing. And honestly, I think building my own group from the ground would probably be the best way to go. That's kind of why I started this podcast, not to build a group, but because I don't see a lot of practitioners talking about folklore as a place to learn, like as a way that our ancestors are speaking to us. I don't see a lot of practitioners talking about just purely Black American spiritual practices as they grew here in the U.S., whether that's traditional or modern or otherwise. Like it's always layered with something else. It's never hoodoo performed as a singular practice. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't. I think any spiritual practice is valuable if it fills your cup and it doesn't harm anyone else in the process. But, since I couldn't find what I was looking for, because I couldn't find someone else on that fringe that I was trying to connect with, I decided to enter the chat. I decided to have a podcast where I talk the folklore and I talk not so traditional, not so modern hoodoo, It's a little harder to do that with an in-person community, but Big Sis is the one who told me to start this podcast, and I'm not like super successful and super well listened to, but those of you who are here, you found me. You were looking for something and you found me, and I find success in that. So maybe she's got something with this idea that I should build my own hoodoo community in person as well. All right. So if you've made it this far and you've been here before, you know what's next. If you're new, I'm going to tell you. At this point in the podcast, I'd like to read out messages or questions, I should say, that I found from Reddit or Facebook, and then do my best to answer them. So let's get into the first one. The first question reads, looking back in my history, all of my ancestors, especially my great-grandmother, they were prayer warriors. I think my great-grandmother had a prayer closet because they grew up in a Black Pentecostal church. I know they used to a lot of home remedies such as salt, mustard, honey, and vinegar. My auntie uses fish oil and uses herbs instead of medicine. However, when I asked my aunt about hoodoo or root work, she didn't understand what I meant by the meaning of hoodoo, and she's in her late 60s. Because it sounds like they did hoodoo in my family and they didn't give it a name, growing up, my family used to say, be careful what you sweep in and don't sweep under a person's feet, use pine sol to mop the floor, and used to eat and talk good about a member that has passed after a funeral and the closest relative's home. My family didn't believe in magic per se, but they did believe in the power of prayer and God. So the question is this hoodoo in my family? Um, it's definitely spiritual expression for sure. I will say that when I explained to grandma what this podcast was about, she said, voodoo? She said it just like that, cousin. She was like, voodoo? And I was like, no, no, grandma, not voodoo, hoodoo. People would say what you do is hoodoo. And she goes, I don't know about that. And I'm like, of course you don't, because hoodoo is a relatively newer term, I guess. Like in the folklore I read, for example, when someone says, "Oh, they got hoodooed," or "I went to the hoodoo woman," it was always a something separate. You know what I mean? It was always something separate than what they were doing in their day to day life. Or it was like to say that somebody got rooted, right? They got hoodoo, they got rooted. So yeah, I understand where you're saying that, that's not what they called it. My grandmother wouldn't call it hoodoo either. She calls it, that backwoods stuff. But specifically, it sounds like, again, like this ethno-religious thing. I'm starting to see the appeal of that as an answer. It sounds like it's just cultural things in your family. They might not have been doing work and setting out candles and doing all that other stuff, but the cultural aspects of hoodoo in your black family were alive and well. So I guess, yeah, sure, that's hoodoo. It's hoodoo as it appears in your family's lineage. It's not traditional. It's not modern. It's just culture. Okay, next question. Can I summon Papa Legba? Oh Lord. Okay. So I've been wanting to summon Legba and give him respect, honor, and give him offerings. I wanted to ask for him to protect me, guide me, and lead me to the right path. I'm black, but I'm not Haitian. I'm just African American. Can I still summon him, or will it backfire on me, or is there anything I need to know? Okay, what you need to know is that your question is not being asked in the right place. You need to seek out a Vodou practitioner, Haitian or New Orleans. You need to seek one of those folks out. Maybe even find one of their Reddit boards, and then maybe they can give you some guidance on where to find the information you're looking for. Because I am not a voodoo. I do not practice any of that. As I've said before, I do not follow the Loa. But that's a very specific religion with specific criteria and specific traditions. It's not so open like hoodoo is, for example. It's a little more organized, I should say. It's not that hoodoo's open, it's just not organized. So you need to find someone who's in the tradition to show you. I don't even like, to me, that question, that's not something I would do. I would never try to summon someone, a Loa. I wouldn't do that. I'm not initiated in the practice. I don't know what I wouldn't even know where to start or what I'm doing. So I think the best thing to do is to find someone in the practice who can help you. All right, and for this episode, I decided to pick a third question because I thought it was so interesting. It says, how to activate John the Conqueror root. Question: recently picked up this root, but it seems as if certain steps has been taken in order for the root to be activated. Different steps than activating, cleansing your typical crystal. Okay, so this is the kind of thing I was talking about before, about modern practice and how modern practice kind of is mixed in with like the new age way of doing things, or like the general witchiness of doing things. So typically, you don't activate or cleanse roots in hoodoo. You can wake up the spirit, sure, but we don't you're not burying it in salt or smudging it or I don't know, any of that like you do with a crystal. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you're not leaving it out under the full moon. You're not doing any of that with roots. Typically speaking, I got a chance to speak to a traditional hoodoo at one of the festivals I went to last summer, and that's where I purchased my John the Conqueror root. I got it from them, and they told me to soak it in rum or whiskey, specifically unspiced, like it can't be a spiced liquor. And or if I was comfortable, to blow tobacco smoke over it to wake up the spirit of the root. So again, I gathered that this person was traditional. They were talking in a way that made it seem like they are traditional, but like we said, like I've said in a previous podcast, you got to be careful out here when you meet other practitioners, because sometimes they present themselves as something they're not. But I feel like this person was genuine. So that would be my answer to you. Is you would have to. That's what I did. I soaked it with. No, I didn't soak it. I blew cigar smoke over it to wake it up. I've heard people rubbing it. I've heard people they'll make an oil out of it. You know, I'm sure there's many ways. There's as many ways to wake up a spirit as there are regions of where hoodoo is practiced. But those are the ways you go about it. You definitely don't treat it like a crystal. You don't treat it like a crystal. John the Conqueror root is, I know that other magical practices and traditions use John the Conqueror root, but it's very specific to hoodoo. It's a, if there was such a thing as a holy herb in hoodoo, I think John the Conqueror root is up there as like a holy token, a holy curio. So, yeah, I soak it in rum or blow smoke over it is my answer to you. But that's what I learned. I'm not a traditionalist, so if you go somewhere else or ask someone else, they might tell you something else, but that's how I learned it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If you've made it this far, you made it to the end. Congrats. Thank you for just being here with me and listening to my ramblings. I feel like I rambled. But anyway, thank you again for just staying with me. Please make sure that you give this video a like, or if you're on podcasts, please rate me 5 stars, leave a review. Please subscribe or follow. I would appreciate it. You can please email me. My email will be in the description box or in the show notes, wherever you see this. Before we go, I always have to do it, and here it comes. Cousin, you deserve the world. Whatever your practice is, however you're practicing it, it's good for you, and so it is good, period. And if you call for your blessings, they will come to you. I'll see you guys next time.